Hello and welcome to the Nature Garden podcast with me, Carl Steinson, and the weekending show team from Lionheart Radio. It's a bonny wee wander along the nature paths, riverbanks and beaches, through woods and wetlands, parks and gardens, and a chance to hear some great Northumbrian stories. On today's show, we're looking at the wonders of October. Tom Pattinson's here to explain the incredible chemistry that creates the colours of autumn and the fall of leaves. Tom Cadwallander's been tracking the amazing arrivals of birds from all over the world to our coast, and we take a countryside walk with them. And happy fish reports from the rivers of Northumberland. Steve Lowe has been catching up with the Northumberland Rivers Trust. We've got more great top tips from Tom and some jobs for the week, all coming up on today's show. Many of the sycamore's leaves here have fallen in the recent windy weather, and greens are turning to blazing reds and resplendent golds across our gardens and fields. As it gets cooler, the colours get warmer for a while, and Tom Pattinson's been looking at the magic chemistry of nature.
Plant survival is a fascinating aspect of gardening. No more so than in autumn, when certain plants are preparing for approaching winter. Tough evergreen types don't need to do this. They can stand up to the frost. Coniferous types, the firs and the pines, etc., they have modified leaves, needles which are covered in wax. They don't need to worry. They even have within the heart of them, those needles, a substance akin to antifreeze, so there's no frost damage there, or very little indeed. They survive. But what about the poor trees and shrubs which are deciduous, which have large leaves and which are filled with water as well as chemicals? What happens to water when frost arrives? Well, it expands, doesn't it? And that water is in the cells of the leaves of deciduous plants, and they burst and break. And that puts the trees' very survival, or the shrubs' very survival, at risk. This is one of the reasons why deciduous trees and shrubs shed their leaves and protect themselves over winter, and of course take a long break to recharge the batteries, so to speak. And this leads to a brilliant colour change. Now, throughout the year, those leaves have been green, basically. They contain mainly chlorophyll, the green colouring pigment, which is mainly responsible for, one of the key players anyway, in the photosynthetic process, photosynthesis, making food for the plant. But the amount of daylight decreasing and the amount of warmth decreasing as we go into autumn triggers a chemical reaction within those leaves, within the plant, and it prepares to shed the leaves. And as it sheds them, the green that was seen all of the time, the chlorophyll, it decreases. And of course, photosynthesis slows down, and another pigment which has been there all of the time, carotenoid, it comes in various colours. There are carotenoids in bright yellows and oranges, etc. Well, they come to the surface. They're unveiled because the chlorophyll is fading. There is another pigment which just appears in autumn, and that is anthocyanin. And it offers the colour red to plants, and some browns, of course. And it appears in autumn too. So the colours are coming from substances within the plant which have been hidden. And the whole process is the plant retrieving any nutrient value that's left in the leaf deep into its system before the leaves are broken off. how are the leaves broken off and fall? That again is a chemical reaction. There's a formation of a layer called a separation layer, and that is at the base of the leaf blade, the leaf stalk, where it joins a branch, and substances such as decisic acid are active, and they narrow that gap with formation of this layer, and when it's completed, it just falls off. Now, anthocyanin is key to that process as well, and when anthocyanin does the job, the leaf falls off cleanly. But in certain plants, trees, shrubs, the leaves don't quite fall. They're just about dead, but they don't fall. And one of them is the beech. And we have the beech hedge, or a beech tree, mainly the beech hedge, with all those dead leaves dangling all of the time. Quite amazing, and they don't drop until the new lot of leaves come in spring. Another one is the oak, which hangs on to leaves, so not quite completing the process. So this is the process of losing leaves. Deciduous trees and shrubs go through this. How long does it last? Well, that depends. When a number of warm sunny days are followed by cool evenings, no frost, just cooler evenings, it goes on seemingly forever. It's just brilliant. Those are the conditions that support it. And you can tell at a glance at the beginning of the year what things are going to be like. If there's a warm, wet spring, followed by the summer that's not too hot, not too dry, and this is a concern this year because we had a long drought during the summer. If it's not too hot, not too dry, and the conditions I've just described as warm sunny days, cool evenings without frost, then it goes on beautifully. I saw the beginning of this process just last week in the attic garden when there's a gorgeous tree called the Cicidiphyllum japonicum, and it's just starting to change the colour of its leaves. The anthocyanins are starting to work. There is sort of a dusky pink to yellowish appearance on those leaves. This is an interesting plant or tree or shrub because it's called the burnt sugar tree, because those leaves have a fragrance of burnt sugar when you put a handful of them up to your nose. The start of leaf fall. I hope it's a long process because unlike November the 5th, this is nature's fireworks display and it can go on for ages given right weather conditions.
To quote novelist George Eliot, real name Mary Ann Cross of Middlemarch fame, "Delicious autumn, my very soul is wedded to it, and if I were a bird I would fly about the earth seeking the successive autumns." Tom Cadwallander from the British Trust for Ornithology has been getting very excited over the last few weeks about the migrations of birds, and he's been up to a special place on the Northumberland coast, the holy island of Lindisfarne. So Tom, how was your visit?
What a weekend we've had, Carl. Absolutely amazing from a birdwatcher's point of view. Gosh, it was just like a kind of a perfect storm, if you pardon the expression, sort of a weather pattern, which really has a big effect on how birds kind of operate, if you like. Anyway, to put it into context, in the autumn, when birds are on move, you're looking for weather patterns all the time as a bird watcher. And what we had was a low pressure filling through the UK, and the low pressure was moving through at such a point, and there were fronts associated with that. So there was rain fronts coming through, and as the low pressure was moving, it was spinning, or they spin, in an anti-clockwise direction, which gives you easterly winds. So yes, how does that make a difference, you say? Well, actually, there are lots of birds sort of moving on the other side of the North Sea through continental Europe, and they're heading south. And a lot of these birds will be brought to the coast and use the coast as navigation. So this low pressure will bring birds which are moving and drop them because of the wind and the rain. They'll drop them on the east coast of Britain. And it can be just absolutely staggering. This is a natural phenomenon, by the way. This happens almost every year if the weather's in the right situation. So it was incredible. So on Saturday I went out. I was at home, and I went out around Alnmouth, and I got soaked to the skin both morning and afternoon. In fact, I ran out of dry clothes to wear, and I found absolutely nothing. It hadn't happened in Alnmouth, but I was hearing reports of other places, whereas goldcrests were piling in. Goldcrests are the tiniest bird you can imagine, the smallest bird that we have in Europe, weighing sort of 5.5 grams, and that's no more heavy than a pound coin. Incredible. These birds were kind of just piling in. And there was robins, and there was thrushes, and there was other species coming in. But I wasn't finding anything at Alnmouth, so I was quite frustrated. So what do you do? So on Sunday, I headed north to Holy Island, where just every birdwatcher who was interested in coastal migration was meeting up. And unintentionally, just the weather pattern dragged us there, and Holy Island is the place to go. And as we were driving across the causeway, we're hearing reports of the great things were happening. So yes, there were more goldcrests piling in, and goldcrests, as I mentioned, are absolutely tiny, and they're kind of like their relation to almost to warblers, to leaf warblers, but they're so tiny. They're kind of greeny, sort of pale green sort of colour, and on the wings they have two little wing bars, but on their heads they have what looks like just a yellow sort of flash on the head, which gives it its name, of course, goldcrest. And if you look closely, sometimes you can see the male, which has an orange mixture within the yellow, and that's how you tell the males. And the females haven't got this, but you can tell them that way. But there was thousands and thousands and thousands of these birds coming in. And we got to the north shore of the island, and there were birds, these tiny little birds, hanging on to blades of marron grass, for goodness sake. They just made landfall. And alongside those guys, there were species like robins, and you don't normally think robins are kind of migratory, but they are, and we can tell the difference between the normal kind of or regular robins and these continental ones by their colour. The breasts are just a tint more orangey, but also they have this grey sort of head and shoulders, if you like, more grey than the kind of the ones we regularly see during the summer in the UK. And these birds will flood in and fill our gardens. Anyway, there was loads of robins coming in, and on the back of that there were things like yellow-browed warblers, which is a species of warbler, leaf warbler, which breeds quite close to us than they used to. And these birds have got two wing bars, and they've also got a huge eye stripe. And these are about sort of 4.5 inches long, so they're tiny as well. And they're wonderful. They have this lovely little sort of call they make, and you pick them up in the little plantations. Also, we were having things like there was several red-breasted flycatchers dropped in on Holy Island, and these are birds of the high European mainland, and they breed there, and they're coming south, and they've got little flashes of white in their wings, in their tail. And some of the birds we saw are just sort of first-year birds, so they only had a hint of red on their breasts. But others were people saw the full males, and there was a nice sort of red throat to them. But actually, the piece de the resistance of the whole thing was the kind of almost like the holy grail of autumn migration, and that was the red-flanked bluetail. And as the name suggests, it has red flanks and it has a blue tail, and it's amazing. But they're so rare. And there was one in the plantation at the Snook on Holy Island. And this bird was great. The red-flanked bluetails are kind of the same family as redstart or stonechat, and they're small thrush-like birds. And speaking of thrushes, we did have a number of redwings coming in, and they were sort of filling the dunes, and they're even hopping along the ground through the dune land. But anyway, back to the red-flanked bluetail. This bird breeds no further west than eastern Finland, but rarely comes to the UK, and has this lovely little orangey red flanks on the side of its breast and running down there, but the blue tail is just so sweet. It's delightful, but kind of browny wings and a little pale patch in its throat. But they're only about 5.5, 6 inches tall, and they'll stand quite upright, just like a redstart or a stone chat or even a wheatear. They're kind of in that sort of group. But they're so exciting. And, it was great. Actually, bird watchers on the island were just high-fiving each other after seeing this bird. It was just absolutely unbelievable. It was so exciting. But we've gone through a couple of days and the weather has changed. It's gone to the west. So this flow of birds on migration, they'll go back to normal. They'll be on the other side of the North Sea now, and they'll kind of just carry on. But we've had a great few days. And I tell you what, it's so exciting. Man, it was so exciting. It was great fun. I'm still excited now. It's absolutely brilliant. And Holy Island is the place. Wonderful.
It's time to do something very exciting. Harvest our fruits. There are succulent blackberries in our cottage garden, and it's apple time for Tom, who's on a voyage of discovery.
Another aspect of autumn that I absolutely love is the harvesting of fruit from the garden. Apples in particular, Malus domestica. I just love them. I've grown them for all of my gardening life in different gardens, and I just admire. I love growing them. I hold them in my hand, the different varieties, cultivars, and say, gosh, you're different and beautiful. It's been a good year for apples this year. I have about maybe, I don't know, well under 20 varieties in the garden, but don't be impressed by that, for goodness sake. There are actually 8,000 different varieties known worldwide. And a little fact, interestingly, if you ate a different apple variety every day for 20 years, every day of your life for 20 years, there'd still be more to try. Amazing, isn't it? No wonder one day a year was dedicated to the Apple Day, about 30 years ago, 1990 to be precise. And it's grown year on year. That's National Apple Day. And this year, as usual, it's the 21st of October. That's coming soon. It's spreading around the world now, that idea. So what about the apple? Well, some of them will grow in the northeast very well, some will not. And of the number that are available, if you compare the number available to buy by Joe Public and Mary Public, if you wish to, it's very few really. Next time you're in the garden centre, look around, and the varieties on sale which are relevant to growing in the northeast, which is the way it should be. But if you want something extra special, say one of the many heritage varieties, then you have to go to a specialist. Pick up one of the catalogues or contact them online, fruit specialist, just Google it and you'll get them, those heritage varieties. And when it comes to heritage varieties, I just love Isaac Newton. There's a lovely little story behind that. It was actually called Flower of Kent, that culinary apple. And it was growing at his family abode in the garden. And it's when he came up in 1665 during the Great Plague in London to get away from it. Remember, 1666, next year, was the Great Fire of London. Anyway, he came home from university to be safe. And that's allegedly when the apple fell on his head. It helped him, of course, in life because his thoughts on gravity were brought together by that moment, he said later in life. And ever since then, we call it the Isaac Newton apple, not Flower of Kent. And you can buy that, actually. So just think about it. An apple that's been growing since near the beginning of the 17th century is still available. The graft's been taken from it, the little scions of wood. This is the case. So look, if you just want something out of the ordinary, for one or two varieties that will suit you and something that's got a little bit history behind it. But of course you'll be after basic apples, and this means like of Bramley seedling, discovered in 1813. launched in 1813. And then there's Scarlet Bramley, 1913, about 100 years later, a scarlet version of it. I've got them both in my garden. One green, the Bramley, and the other beautiful scarlet colour. It really is well named. And they keep throughout winter. So we've got Lord Derby as well. That's another cooker, which is worth growing, cooking apple. It lasts well through winter. And there's Howgate Wonder. One of the biggest cooking apples you can get. It doesn't last as long as the others, but it's good to have around. And then there are the current dessert apples, which we just love to get our teeth into. I've got 2 or 3 of those as well. The very first one is Discovery, the beautiful red one. It is ready by the end of August, early September. I'm still picking it now from the trees. Beautiful taste, but it doesn't last. It's gone soft by Christmas, so you've got to eat them quickly. That's one of the problems. Another one is James Grieve. I think of Jimmy Greaves, the ex-Chelsea footballer, but this is James Grieve. It's a lovely apple, Scottish-based apple. That's where it was developed. And another one, Braeburn, right up to date with the one we see in the shelves at the supermarket. It's a good one as well. And lovely Egremont russet. I could go on. All of these, each of these apples is self-fertile. So you could get away with just having one apple tree on your patio in a pot or out in the garden, and it will set fruit because it's self-fertile. And generally there are other fruit trees in the area, so the bees will look after it for you and give you some apples. One of them is not self-fertile, and that's the Bramley seedling. It's called a triploid variety. We need 2 more varieties to pollinate it, to fertilise it, to get the crop. But I've got quite a few varieties here and in neighbouring gardens which flower at the same time. That's the key, flowering at the same time as it. And we get a good crop from them. I'm a Marlus domesticaholic, apple-aholic.
Keeping our rivers in good condition is an ongoing task, and Steve Lowe from the Northumberland Rivers Trust has been taking a closer look with Peter Kerr at progress on a weir on a beautiful stretch of the River Alne at Alnwick. On a bit of a nippy, windy old day, it has to be said. Over to you, Steve and Peter.
Well, here we are in Hune Park in Alnwick today, and I'm here with Peter Kerr from Northumberland Rivers Trust. Hi, Peter.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm all right, yeah. It's a bit cold today, though.
Yeah, it's a bit blowy. Definitely autumn now, yeah.
It is, yeah. So, Pete, why we're here today, then?
Yeah, so we're here at Filbertoff Weir, where we've just finished our fish pass to help the salmon and sea trout go up the River Alne. And, yeah, delighted with the job. You know, W.L. Strawn and Son done a cracking job. And we've done this work with Northumberland Estate, who've very kindly contributed to some of the elements of it as well. So, yeah, it's a great project.
Why did it need to be put in place in particular?
Yeah, well, the Alne's got a great run of salmon and sea trout that come in from the sea, and they come upstream every year to spawn in the headwaters and the side streams. But the fish passes that were there before were really on the last legs. You know, a lot of timber in them, they were falling to bits. And to be fair, you know, in high water and in low water, it just didn't really work. So we've come in with this project that's funded by the Water Environment Grant.
Okay.
So it's actually European funding we managed to get a hold of to really improve these fish passes and put in place some state-of-the-art fish passes that will last for, 20, 30, 40 years, you know, and so really some great improvements.
Fantastic. I noticed there is a bit of art in there as well, you know, the deflector, it's got a little bit of artistic license on there.
Yeah. We've put in a debris deflector to stop these fish passes getting full of sticks and branches. And yeah, with this one, like you say, Steve, we put a bit of a wave on the top of that just to break it up a little bit and make it blend in a bit better with the environment. Yeah.
Now, obviously, when anyone walks past this, they're going to see something and not necessarily understand what it's about, really. But so it's really good to have the opportunity to talk about it. This is a Larinia fish pass?
Yeah. So it's called a Larinia fish pass. It was named after a Belgian engineer who's designed this type of pass. So it's, if you can imagine, like a steel trough with like zigzag baffles on the bottom of it.
Okay.
And basically what that does is it breaks up the water, makes it become, just slows that flow up. and basically the fish just swim through because the water's slower than it would normally be.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've been proven to work great. But even little fish just swim straight through these things.
Fantastic.
And they'll last a long time.
Yeah, and on the other side, there's another intriguing little structure.
Yeah. One of the species that tends to get forgotten about is the eel. The European eel, fascinating little things, which come in from all the way across the Atlantic, across the Sargasso Sea, and they come up our rivers as tiny little things, only 40, 50 millimeters long. And of course, these big weirs, it's a hard thing for a salmon to get past. It's even harder for a little elver to get past. And so what we've done is we've put in a slope with some studs on that, and basically the little elvers wriggle through those studs and find their way upstream, and they grow up into adult eels.
Fantastic. So that's a really good project. I know together we've been working on these things. We've done a few of them now.
Yeah,
we're halfway through. We've got another 2 to do.
Three down, 2 to do, and it's going great. And we've already seen some sea trout which have come through the ones we've completed. So they seem to work. Yeah, we've had our first customers.
Yeah, that's excellent. So a lot of people probably haven't heard of Northumberland Rivers Trust because it's not a membership organisation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing at the moment?
Yeah. So we're a tiny charity, and we work with communities, with anglers, with all sorts of various partner organisations, and our aim is to improve and protect all of the rivers and streams that flow into the North Sea, south of the Tweed and north of the Tyne.
Yeah.
So I think we've got about 96 little streams and rivers, some big ones. We've got the Coquet River Aln. And we work with others. We try and bring in as much money as we can to get things done on the ground. We're very much about doing stuff. And over the years, we're putting some great fish passes, wetlands. We do a lot of tree planting over the winters. And if people are interested, please get in touch. We're going to have some tree planting this winter.
Yeah, I know one of the other projects that I'm actually working on with you at the moment is something called story mapping.
Definitely.
And that will give people an online opportunity to investigate rivers. And celebrate rivers.
Yeah, definitely. We've got some fascinating rivers in our parks and some great wildlife. This morning we've just been watching a little dipper playing in that eel pass there, and we've got some wonderful wildlife on our doorstep. And if we can get people out enjoying that, then so much the better, particularly in these difficult times,
Absolutely, because most people actually recognise the environment as something that's just not just on the doorstep, something that's vital for them now.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's great for your physical well-being, also your mental well-being as well. Just getting out in the nature beside the rivers, it has to be done.
Mind, there's something to be said for keeping away from the sound of running water all of the time. You and I have to find trees all the time.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be careful. Definitely.
Well, that's brilliant, Pete. Thanks very much for the time, and hopefully we'll catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, not at all. And if people are interested in helping out with things like tree planting and stuff, do get in touch.
We've got a Facebook page, which is just Facebook. Northumberland Rivers Trust.
That's it. Our website's currently being updated. That should be live any day now. And get in touch. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah,
cheers.
No problem. Thank you.
Let's go and get warm.
Definitely. Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
This is the Nature Garden Podcast with Carl Steinson, Tom Pattinson, Tom Cadwallander and Steve Lowe.
You can see the work of the Northumberland Rivers Trust in action on Facebook at North Rivers Trust. That's at North Rivers Trust. As you probably know by now, we do like to get out and about a bit, and Tom Cadwallander has been taking some nature garden notes on an exciting autumnal countryside walk.
One of my favourite things to do at this time of year is to wander around sort of hedgerows and country lanes and in the wider countryside, and you're just sort of looking out for flocks of small birds. And at this time of year they gather up, and there's kind of just roving flocks of really mixed species. And you're likely to come across sort of groups of blue tits and grey tits and coal tits, but also mixed in there'll be chaffinches and other sort of finch species. And some of these chaffinches will be birds which have come across from Scandinavia to winter here. But they're constantly moving around, and they're moving through. They're foraging. They're looking for food. But in amongst all of these things, there are other species like we're going to hear robins ticking away, and you can perhaps hear robin behind me just ticking on there. They also have this crazy plaintive sort of winter song, and they're quite incredibly territorial, getting into the autumn and into winter, and where they can even fight to the death. But we're going to be seeing sort of thrush species, and I can see blackbirds just sort of foraging away, just feeding on some of those rowan berries and hawthorn berries, the bright red ones, and they're going to be sort of gorging themselves on those things. And soon there's going to be a lot more thrushes coming in, birds again coming from Scandinavia to winter in this country. Oh, and there's a song thrush just hopped in front of me there. Oh, fantastic. At one time, song thrushes were really a species in decline, because their favourite food is snail, and snails have been sort of suffering from the increasing use of molluscicides, and that's on the decline now. And the song thrush population, at least sort of locally, is starting to rebound, and we're seeing many more song thrushes. But the countryside is alive with these birds. It's post-breeding season, so there's a lot more young birds around, and they're foraging, trying to kind of fill themselves up before winter cracks in, because a lot of these birds will perish, of course, during winter. But it's wonderful, actually, just wandering around. You're never sure what you're going to see. There are birds just everywhere. Oh, and there's dunnocks. We see a lot more dunnocks around. Dunnocks are those stripy sort of grey and brown birds we see a lot in our gardens. You can see their bills, and the bills are very sharp and pointy, which suggests they're insectivorous. But they still manage to find food. And if you have a little bit of a pond in your garden, or in looking on these lanes, little sort of puddles and things, you'll see a number of small birds coming down to either bathe or drink, or just sort of get themselves sorted out. And around these little water bodies, these transient water bodies, and they're really very, very important. But in the fields, I can see lots of jackdaws and rooks, and you can hear them perhaps. The jackdaw making such a rackety noise. I think they're fantastic. They're so bright and intelligent, these birds. They're quite something. But there's a little group of coal tits coming in front of me now. I can see this coal tit, and it was just preening, and it's a young bird. It's a bird of this year, so it's not the kind of the buffy brown colour underneath of the adults, but it still has this white patch on the nape of its neck. Got the black cap and this white nape. No other bird will have this little white nape, and it's a good indication. It's a good identification feature of that species. But and as they move through, there's a couple of goldfinches, and they're coming across, and they're feeding on some of the seed heads. They do like teasel, these goldfinches. Oh, my estimation of 2 is a real underestimation. There's about 22 of them. They've just lifted from the corner of the field where they've been feeding on stubble. Oh wow, it's great actually. There's just loads of birds around, and it's a great time of year to wander and just to see what there is there, because a lot of our residents or breeding birds are going to be supplemented by birds coming here for winter. Believe it or not, some of these small birds will travel quite a long way to spend the winter with us. And it might be a bit chilly now, but can you imagine what it's going to be like in their home grounds, their breeding grounds, where it's really quite inhospitable at this time, and they're clearing out. But yes, if you've got a bit of chance of time, just have yourself a wander around and keep your ears open. That's a great way of catching up with lots of species, just by learning a few of the commoner garden sort of bird noises, and you get onto things that way. But keep an eye out. Oh, and it's a wonderful education. I love it.
I think it's time to pop over to Tom's again for some jobs for the week or so in the garden.
Well, just because it's autumn doesn't mean we can put our feet up. Not real gardeners, because there's such a lot to be done out there. And at the moment, this is what I'm doing this week. I'm certainly picking the raspberries. The autumn fruiting raspberries are really worth trying. Always grown them. The main crop is fine, but if you want a reminder of that first taste of raspberries way back in late June, July, then here it is again in the autumn varieties. Not just the red varieties, Autumn Bliss, etc. But there's a beautiful golden one, all gold, and it just looks so good when it's served up. Same raspberry taste, it's a treat. They're still fruiting at the moment, and given this weather, I see there are quite a few more young fruits there which will ripen. We're collecting them every day, just from half a dozen autumn raspberry plants. Really worth trying. I'm also storing the apples I'm picking. The apples don't all ripen at the same time. They keep on until about November. Picking them, pick them if you can when they're ripened. And I have a wooden storage tray standing in sort of a tower of it with wooden boxes in there, latted bottom, so there's plenty of air gets through. It's placed in the garage, which is lovely and airy, not too bright in there. And of course it's frost-free, so I'm not wrapping them up individually. They're on sheets of greaseproof paper, so the air can really circulate, and more importantly, most days when I go in there, I can check them to see none of them are rotting. One can spoil quite a few around it. So that's continuing. The strawberries, autumn strawberries are still fruiting, but now's the time to release some of those runners that have rooted, young plants. Put them in the garden for the moment and you can plant them up later. I'm also eyeing up 1 or 2 plants to put into pots because I love early strawberries. And if you plant up some of the older plants, I don't keep them any more than 4 years, by the way. So something that's going into its 3rd or 4th year, I pot it up, put it in the cold greenhouse. It grows on gradually, and flowers and fruits. Just watch out for green fly because that still attacks in the depth of winter. And harvest them much earlier than the June Wimbledon type strawberries. Just a nice little treat in pots. Moving on, I'm picking the grapes in the greenhouse, of course, but watching out because there are lots of moulds about this time. If you need to have a current of air going through there, not too much water slopping around in the greenhouse, keep things as dry as possible, and they're fine just standing on the vine, and pick them as you need them. They're beautiful at the moment, the grapes. Out in the garden, the potatoes in pots for Christmas, they're coming along well, but one day soon there'll be a threat of frost and I'll start bringing the containers, the bags and the large pots which contain those, and I'll move those into the cool greenhouse as well, the unheated greenhouse. Any vacant plots outside, by the way, vegetables, don't leave any weeds lying around. Get them onto the compost heap if they've got no seeds formed on them, and any green waste on the beds outside, get that into the composting facility. If you leave weeds on your vegetable bed, that's a perfect place for pests and diseases to linger, especially pests over winter, and you want to get rid of any area that will support them. Going out into the herbaceous borders, I'm chopping down quite a few of the dying and dead herbaceous top growth. The perennial root keeps going, of course, and that will pop up again with shoots next spring. And all that is brown material, which is also go into the composting facility. Remember, it's a combination of greens and browns that make the compost facility work. I'm out in the garden. I'm enjoying the hardy cyclamen, the sedum, the beautiful ice plants, so called by some. Beautiful sedum heads, and late bees are coming for it. The occasional butterfly still, and something flowering out there apart from the hardy cyclamen at ground level. The Choicea ternata. What a beautiful shrub it is, commonly called the Mexican orange blossom. It's covered in its white flowers at the moment, and they're so highly fragrant. These are just some of the jobs I'm going to get my teeth into next week. Enjoy your gardening, folks.
You've been listening to gardener Tom Pattinson, birder Tom Cadwallander from the British Trust for Ornithology, and Steve Lowe and Peter Kerr from the Northumberland Rivers Trust. I'm Carl Steinson, and do check out our Twitter and Facebook page, The Nature Garden that is, and the website. We've got the Nature Garden Notebook, that's naturegardennotebook.com, all one word there for Nature Garden Notebook, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, enjoy your garden and nature. Bye for now.